What if a US Army Ranger Battalion fought Khalid ibn al-Walid at the Battle of Yarmouk in August of 636 AD? One of the greatest military commanders in human history stood on a plateau above the Yarmuk River in what is now modern Syria and destroyed an empire. Khalid ibn al-Walid, called the Sword of Allah by the Prophet Muhammad himself, had never lost a battle, not once. In 30 years of continuous warfare across Arabia, Iraq and Syria, fighting for and then against and then again for the forces of Islam, he had won every engagement he ever commanded. Generals who faced him came with superior numbers, superior equipment, and established reputations and left broken, retreating, or dead. At Yarmouk, he faced a Byzantine army of somewhere between 80,000 and 150,000 soldiers, the full military power of the Eastern Roman Empire, with a Muslim force estimated between 20,000 and 40,000. 6 days of fighting later, the Byzantine army was shattered. Syria was open to Muslim conquest, and the Eastern Roman Empire began its 800-year retreat that would end only at the walls of Constantinople. But what if the 2nd Ranger Battalion 580, of the most precisely trained combat soldiers in the world, had been attached to the Byzantine army the morning that battle began? Khalid the Battle of Yarmouk. To understand what the Rangers are walking into, you have to understand what Khalid ibn al-Walid actually was, because describing him as a great general doesn't begin to cover it. Khalid had commanded cavalry charges, siege operations, defensive withdrawals, and flanking maneuvers across 3 decades of continuous warfare in some of the most demanding terrain on earth. He had fought in the Arabian desert, in the marshes of Iraq, and in the Syrian highlands. He had defeated Persian armies, Byzantine armies, and Arabian tribal confederations, often simultaneously. His tactical instincts were so refined that he could redirect thousands of cavalry mid-battle with minimal communication, reading the flow of an engagement in real time and responding faster than his enemies could process what was happening. At Yarmouk, he divided his 40,000-man force into 36 infantry units and 4 cavalry corps, positioning the cavalry on the flanks with specific orders to prevent encirclement. When the Byzantine forces attempted to use their numerical advantage to push through the Muslim center, Khalid let them come, absorbing the pressure on the center, while his cavalry swept around both flanks simultaneously. When parts of the Muslim infantry began to waver under pressure, Khalid personally rode to the crisis point, stabilized the line, and counterattacked. He did this multiple times across 6 days of fighting. His army was not just following orders, they were fighting with the absolute conviction that God had sent them. Soldiers who fight with that certainty are a different kind of opponent from soldiers who are simply following a battle plan. They don't route the same way, they don't respond to pressure the same way, and they don't stop the same way. The Byzantine army, by contrast, was a coalition force of Armenians, Slavs, Arabs, fighting for the empire, and regular Roman units with a coordination problem that always accompany a force assembled from multiple nations with different languages, different tactical traditions, and different levels of commitment to the outcome. Their commander, Bahan, was competent, but facing a problem that competence alone couldn't solve. On the 6th day, a sandstorm blew in from the east, directly into the Byzantine faces, and Khalid launched his final assault. The Byzantine army collapsed, retreated toward the Yarmuk River Gorge, and a significant portion of the force died in the retreat. It remains one of the most decisive military victories in world history. The 2D Ranger Battalion, 580 Rangers, 3 rifle companies, 1 headquarters company, and attached support elements. Each Ranger carries an M4 carbine, a sidearm, fragmentation grenades, and enough ammunition for sustained engagement. The battalion has M240 machine guns, M320 grenade launchers, sniper teams with M2010 rifles effective to 1,1200 meters, and mortar sections capable of placing precision fire on targets 3 miles away. Rangers are the US Army's premier direct action force, but the 2nd Battalion's particular expertise is large-scale raid operations, assaulting and seizing objectives held by forces significantly larger than themselves, moving fast, hitting hard, and achieving specific tactical goals before a larger enemy can respond effectively. 580 men against an army of 40,000 sounds like the most lopsided matchup in this entire series, and in terms of raw numbers it is. But here is the calculation that makes this scenario genuinely interesting. Rangers don't fight armies, they fight systems. They identify the critical nodes, the command structure, the communication links, the logistical arteries, and they destroy those specific things, because destroying the system is more efficient than killing every soldier in the field. Khalid ibn al-Walid is the system. His personal command presence is what makes the Muslim army function at the tactical level it does. His ability to read the battle in real time and redirect his forces is the difference between a competent army and an unstoppable one. The Rangers know this within 20 minutes of their intelligence officers analysing the battle formation. The mission writes itself: find Khalid, fix Khalid, finish Khalid. The problem is that Khalid ibn al-Walid has spent 30 years being the person other armies are trying to kill. He is very good at not being findable at the wrong moment. The battle attachment to the Byzantine force, the Rangers, arrive on the Byzantine right flank on the morning of day 1, attached to the Armenian contingent, the most disciplined and experienced non-Roman unit in the coalition force. Communication is immediate and severe. Nobody in the Byzantine army speaks English, and the Rangers speak no Greek, Armenian, or Arabic. The battalion's intelligence officer has one Arabic speaker, a sergeant who grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, and speaks a dialect 1,300 years removed from 7th century battlefield Arabic. The Ranger Battalion commander does what Ranger Battalion commanders do in the absence of clear communication with allies. He positions his force where it can do the most damage independently. The right flank, where Khalid's cavalry is positioned to sweep around the Byzantine flank in his historical encirclement maneuver. The M240 machine guns go up and interlocking fields of fire, covering the approach routes. Sniper teams go forward, finding elevated positions with sight lines over the open plateau. Day 1 contact Khalid opens with his standard approach infantry pressure across the entire Byzantine line, testing for weakness, reading the response. When his cavalry sweeps right to begin the historical flanking maneuver, they run into something the Yarmuk plateau has never seen: sustained M240 machine gun fire from concealed positions at 600 meters. The effect is devastating and immediate. The cavalry charge that historically rolled up the Byzantine right flank breaks before it reaches the Ranger positions. Horses don't understand what's killing them, but they respond the same way. Horses always respond to something that terrifies them. They stop, they rear, they run sideways. Khalid's right flank cavalry loses coherence in the first 3 minutes of contact. Khalid responds with the instinct of 30 years of command. He rides to the right flank personally, reads the situation in seconds, and makes the same assessment the Rangers made about him. There is a specific thing causing this problem, and it needs to be found and eliminated. He pulls the cavalry back, reorganizes, and sends scouts forward on foot to locate the source of the fire. Khalid adapts this as the part of the scenario that every other ancient commander in this series has failed to navigate successfully. Khalid doesn't fail. He pulls his cavalry off the right flank entirely and redirects the pressure to the Byzantine center, and left exactly the tactical flexibility that made him undefeatable in his era. He accepts that something on the right flank is costing him cavalry he can't afford to spend, and he goes around it. The Rangers cannot be everywhere. 580 men across a battlefield involving 100,000 plus soldiers on both sides is a thin presence at best. Khalid has correctly identified that the strange new weapons are concentrated on the right flank and the rest of the battlefield doesn't have them. By day 2, Khalid's redirection of pressure has created a genuine crisis on the Byzantine left and centered the same historical crisis that caused parts of the Byzantine line to waver. The Rangers are doing exactly what they came to do on the right flank, holding it, destroying every cavalry approach, maintaining the position. But the battle is being lost on the parts of the field they can't cover. The battalion commander makes a decision. Split the force. 2 rifle companies stay on the right flank. 1 rifle company moves to reinforce the Byzantine center where the line is beginning to crack. The mortar sections begin dropping rounds on the Muslim infantry concentrations, pushing the center the first time in this battle that the Muslim soldiers have encountered fire coming from the sky with no visible source. The effect is significant. Muslim infantry units that have been advancing with complete confidence, men who believe absolutely that they are fighting under divine protection, experience casualties from an invisible source. It doesn't break them. These are soldiers who have been told and believe that dying in this battle guarantees paradise. But it slows them. It creates hesitation where there was none. And on a battlefield where Khalid's entire tactical system depends on specific timing, hesitation matters. Phase 4, the sniper and the general. On day 3, one of the Ranger sniper teams gets a position. Khalid is visible at 900 meters, riding along his line, doing what he does, personally directing, personally steadying, personally being the axis around which his entire army rotates. He is wearing distinctive armor and riding a distinctive horse because he has never needed to fight before. Every army he has ever faced has been trying to get close enough to fight him. Nobody has ever been able to reach him from 900 meters away. The sniper team calls it in to the battalion commander. This is not a tactical decision anymore. This is a decision that will decide the next 200 years of Islamic expansion, the fate of the Byzantine Empire, and the shape of the world that comes after. The battalion commander has 30 seconds to make it. He approves the shot. The round travels 900 meters across the Yarmuk plateau and misses by 18 inches. Khalid's horse shies at the sound of the supersonic crack and moves him sideways at exactly the wrong moment. The round hits the ground behind him. Khalid ibn al-Walid does not flee. He looks in the direction the sound came from, a direction where nothing visible exists, and sits completely still on his horse for approximately 5 seconds. Then he rides away from the position, not in panic, but in calculation, because 30 years of battlefield instinct tells him that if something tried to kill him from that direction and missed, it will try again, and staying in the same place is how people die. The sniper team relocates and spends the next 2 days trying to get another shot. Khalid spends the next 2 days never appearing in the same location twice, never presenting a predictable pattern, directing his army through intermediaries when he has to, and appearing personally only at moments of genuine crisis arriving, stabilizing, disappearing. He is, effectively, doing counter-sniper evasion by pure instinct and 636 ad. The shot never comes clean again. On day 6, the sandstorm arrives. The Rangers' night vision turns it into a tactical advantage. For approximately 4 hours they can see. The Muslim army cannot. For 4 hours on the 6th day, the Ranger Battalion fights in a sandstorm in 636 ad Syria, holding a section of the Byzantine line that is collapsing on both sides of them, doing what Rangers do when everything else has failed, holding the ground they were given. The Byzantine army collapses anyway, not on the Ranger section, but everywhere else. The retreat to the Yarmuk gorge begins. The Rangers disengage in good order, covering the Armenian contingent's withdrawal, and reach defensible terrain before the pursuing Muslim cavalry catches the main Byzantine force at the gorge. The verdict: the Rangers held their section of the line. They didn't lose the battle was lost everywhere they weren't, and they were 580 men on a battlefield involving more than 100,000 soldiers on both sides. Here is the honest accounting. The right flank held for 6 days it had never held historically. Khalid's encirclement maneuver, the tactical masterstroke that doomed the Byzantine right wing, never materialized because M240 machine guns made cavalry charges on that flank untenable. The Muslim army's casualties were significantly higher than they were historically. The mortar fire on the centre, the machine gun positions on the right, the 4 hours of combat in the sandstorm where the Rangers could see and the Muslim infantry couldn't. And Khalid ibn al-Walid survived the one shot that could have changed everything by 18 inches and 5 seconds of instinct. That is the measure of the man. The Rangers brought the most lethal small unit force in the history of warfare to Yarmuk, and the closest they came to changing the outcome was one round that missed by less than 2 feet. Not because the sniper wasn't good enough, because the target was Khalid ibn al-Walid, and 30 years of battlefield survival had made him the most tactically aware human being on the plateau, aware enough to move at exactly the right moment without knowing why moving was necessary. The Byzantine Empire fell at Yarmuk historically because it faced a commander it had no answer for. The Rangers gave it an answer for one afternoon, and the answer missed. The sword of Allah remained unbroken, and Syria fell to Islam exactly as history recorded 6 days of battle, 1 sandstorm, and a general who had never lost and didn't lose here either. What if the shot had connected? What if the Rangers had been deployed 6 months earlier, training the Byzantine army in defensive tactics before Khalid ever reached Syria? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. That's your 2 a.m. what if. 580 of the most trained soldiers in history against the one commander in the ancient world who might actually have deserved the title Undefeatable, and the margin between changing history and watching it happen was 18 inches. Subscribe for a new scenario every week.